Hey, hey, hey. Welcome to Super Serial Showtime, everyone. As always, I am your host, The Metal, and today Marsupial will not be with us because he is sick. So you get just me and maybe one or two other people I might pull on that I've talked to fill in ahead of time. But at the very least, I think Buck will be on. He's just not ready yet. He'll be here in a minute or two. You just get me. Me alone. So buckle up. Enjoy the show. We're going to talk about shows, movies, maybe comics, who knows, whatever I feel like it. Share it out, like the show, and hey, if you're feeling frisky, if you got a little extra cash you want to spare, you can always donate to the show at streamlabs.com/vomitorium live. Really helps us out. And we'll get into it. Hey, Fizchozo, did Marsupial's cold get worse? I think it did. I think it did. Either that or it got like a... the cold itself got a second wind. You know how like people could get a second wind. It's like it seemed like it was getting a little bit better. Maybe he pushed himself a little bit too hard. He was up this morning doing work stuff. But he is out like a light right now. So hopefully he'll be better. Maybe even by tomorrow. Like being sick sucks. I also realized that the music is still way too loud. Why did I not lower this yet? There we go. Sorry for that. Hopefully, I am loud, so you were still probably able to hear me through that, but that's not the volume I wanted at. That's not the volume I wanted at all. So, yeah. I'm going to be flying, not solo. Like I said, I do have backup, but... I am going to be solo for a little bit. Anyhow, I've got stuff to talk about. Let's talk about things. Actually, I had already seen this, but you had dropped it in the general chat, Fizchozo, so I'll talk about that first. Seems appropriate. Let me tab back over there. And it was, well, I guess... former is the appropriate word now, since he passed away, but King of the Hill actor Jonathan Joss was shot in an argument with his neighbor today in Texas, you know, the place where you expect that to happen. He voiced John Redcorn, did a really good job of the character, and unfortunately... after, I think he recorded everything for this upcoming reboot. After this season, he won't be in it anymore. So, personally, I think it'd probably be best to just, like, retire the character. You could always have him just, like, croak away off screen. I don't even know what they do with the character this season, because it hasn't launched yet, so maybe it's a minor return. Who even knows? But it is sad to see, especially, like, that type. It's not like somebody died from a sickness or anything. Somebody got into an argument and was shot. It's a very Texas way to go, though. So, mad respect. Mad respect, but his performance will be missed. I always liked John Redcorn as a character. Because he was intentionally just like the most hypocritical character out of everyone on the entire show. As you expect. He was like a parody of like propaganda in Native Americans, kind of like the whole shed a tear when people litter campaigns and everything. And he would start going off about speeches about what you did to my people. And then immediately, like whatever he said would be counteracted by the fact that he's basically doing the same thing with Nancy. So it was always funny. It was a well-written character. Even more than Peggy? Yes. John Redcorn is an even bigger hypocrite than Peggy. And the reason is, Peggy is kind of just an idiot. And most of the time, she doesn't even realize she's being a hypocrite. Redcorn knows. He'll even stop like halfway through what he's saying because he knows what he's saying is a hypocrite. Like, he's fully aware of everything he's doing. He's even said things like to Hank, because Hank's like the only person in the show that Redcorn actually respects, and be like, I will not heal your wife the way I heal other people's wives. because he knows he's a piece of shit. But I think that's part of the charm of the character. Redcorn was always a very charming character. He's the type of guy that you could kind of maybe even hate in real life if you knew him. And especially if you found out what he was doing with your wife. But as like a character, you can't hate him. He's just too entertaining. He fits in the show. He moves things along. He's a really good character. Oh, hey, there's Buck.
Hello.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. How you doing today?
Doing alright. We talking about John Redcorn because of the unfortunate happenstance with his actor?
Yeah, how he got shot today, which, again, you have to admit, it is the most Texas way to go out, is getting shot by your neighbor in the middle of an argument.
Yeah, apparently he hadn't even been living in that area that long either.
Yeah.
Because he moved there after his first house burned down.
Yeah. So too bad he won't be reprising the character again after this season.
Yeah. I also, I decided to check the article about it to see what happened. It's like, of course, they don't say anything else. Just like they didn't have anything else to add. But then I just look in the comments and it's like, must have been arguing over Nancy Gribble.
Yeah, of course. Or like most of the memes I saw is that Dale finally found out.
Like Dale's got the balls to actually shoot someone.
Of course not. Unless it's got a tranquilizer in, he can even use a gun. No. If Dale did it, he would have poisoned him when he was least expecting.
Like, let's face it, out of 90% of what you see in King of the Hill, Hank is the only one of the main characters that's proven he can fight.
Yeah. No, you know who can? But he's just too weak in the heart to do it, is Bill.
Oh, yeah, that's true. The one time he went nuts, he was kind of scary. It was kind of an Ed with his pebble in his shoe situation.
Yeah, so I do have the article, or an article from the New York Times one on it up in front of me. No, I don't want to subscribe to your platform. Sorry, go away. And it was a pretty crazy situation overall. As Vischoso talks, he jumped in the way of his husband, who was the actual target, I believe. The neighbor was just crazy, apparently. Like, he was loud. Apparently, there were, like, slurs being yelled at them. And in the midst of all of this, like, fighting and arguing and, I guess, hatred, I don't know. It's like, all I have is things to read off of. I can't actually see the fight happening in front of me. He raised his gun from his lap and fired. But also, their investigation hasn't found anything related to that the murder had anything to do with his sexual orientation, which I also kind of believe that too, because they're in San Antonio, which of the places in Texas is kind of the place that's just about as progressive as Austin is. But listen, just because somebody didn't hate you for your orientation doesn't mean they're also still not going to throw slurs around. That's just kind of how it goes, you know? You get heated, you find any insult you can yell at somebody. But, you know, overall, rest in peace. And that's kind of all we could say about it. We could acknowledge maybe some of the other stuff he was in. He's played similar and different roles throughout his entire career. He was in Parks and Rec, Walker, Texas Ranger, Friday Night Lights, True Grit. The guy's got around. He wasn't just John Redcorn in
Yeah,
King of the
although
Hill.
I have noticed that he's played a lot of Jonathan and Joshua's throughout his history.
Yeah, I mean,
Like
to be fair, his
that
name
seems
is
to
John.
be the names that
Yeah.
they settle on.
But I mean, John is also one of like the most common names in the entire world, so it kind of makes sense. And I also know maybe this is part of the like the joke or whatever, but a lot of people of like Native American descent, when they get like Anglo names or whatever, they do tend to either be John or Josh. A lot of times it's because of the meaning of it too, or whatever, right? But those are just like the most common names to pick up. But his name was also Jonathan, so it's standard. Yeah, there's a lot of actors that you see where every character they play just has their name. Could you imagine being an actor though, and you're like, "Oh, cool! I get to play a role. I get to play a character. Who am I playing today? You're gonna play a guy who has your exact ethnic background, and your first name. Have fun." It's like, oh, great. Fishes who ask, who else did that? Oh man, there's a lot of people who just end up playing characters with sometimes their literal name because they got famous doing something else, more or less. Um, so like you'll see somebody who maybe was a stand-up and they get a TV show, and the main character shares their first name because obviously they're trying to sell the show on it. But it's not just in their show. They'll go other places, and their character will also still have their own name. Some people break out of that later in their career, but I'm trying to remember what's his name. Bob Newhart. During his early career, like almost every character he played was Bob. And it does also tend to happen when you have a very common name as well. Right.
And George Lopez also has played quite a few Georges in his time.
A lot of Georges, yeah. But there's also like a lot of smaller or side actors that you probably don't even notice because of all the things they're in, and they are just a smaller side actor where that just happens to them too. Sometimes they weren't even planned to be in like the show or whatever they show up in. They were kind of just like squeezed in there, and then they became a recurring character. So the recurring character just happens to have their name. Oy. So before we jump into anything else, since I have you on, is there anything that you have been watching or reading lately?
Haven't really got a chance to read anything because it's not like there's any bookstores anywhere near here.
Oh, like that's me.
Other than like a couple of friends of mine who are also into Godzilla started showing me like scans and pages from the Godzilla crossovers with Marvel recently.
Oh, nice, nice.
And other than that, watching, I watched Dungeon Meshi. I've watched. Yeah, finally got around to watching Dungeon Meshi. I checked out Apothecary Diaries.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here.
How did you like that? Because I've heard only good things about it, but most of the people I've heard good things about it are people who I only hear good things about everything, so I don't necessarily trust their opinion. Is it worth jumping?
I actually like it. It's pretty good. It's got some good humor because your main character is just, they are, as the name implies, tend to work with like medicines and stuff like that.
Okay.
They've learned a lot about they've learned a lot about people through medicine as well. So it's like they're an extremely like detective style person, but it's like they look into literally everything that goes around. It's like, I'm probably looking into this, I shouldn't say anything. But then they just keep on getting into like bigger and bigger like bullshit going on and becoming effectively this detective in the Imperial Palace because things keep happening and they're just smart enough and observant enough to keep noticing things and solving what's going on.
Yeah.
It is 100% a detective who doesn't want to be a detective kind of story, and it's got some good humor at times.
You know, that actually kind of reminds me of an Octopath Traveler character. So, I don't know if I don't know when Apothecary Diaries started. Like, if it's based off of a manga or whatever, so it could predate it, and maybe it influenced that character, or vice versa, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a manga originally. I've also checked out. I tried to watch a couple of episodes of Mashal Might and Magic.
My brother was telling me to watch that one, but I don't know. It just didn't. The previews at least didn't appeal to me.
It's got some funny moments, in all honesty, but it's like it's just okay, and I couldn't find myself to like binge it the way I tend to with other shows.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
It's like
I watched a couple episodes and it got a few good laughs out of me, but then it's like, nah, I'm not enjoying this enough to keep going. Maybe
it's probably one of
maybe
those
I'll try
shows
again later.
that like if we were still watching TV back in like junior high or high school, and it was like on during the block, like if it was something that came on like Kids WB, or if it was something that came on Toonami.
Yeah, like
we'd
an
watch
episode
it.
a week or something like that.
Yeah. But we'd also watch it because the thing we really want to watch is coming on after it, and it's already on.
Oh yeah, that sounds about appropriate.
Yeah. And that was the
'Cause,
vibe
yeah,
I was
it-
getting from it when Joey was telling me about it, because apparently Tyler really liked it. It's like, yeah, he would like it, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, it's effectively just Harry Potter, but if instead of Harry Potter and a kid gifted in magic, it's just Saitama who has no magic but a lot of brute strength. Like, the guy is dumb as shit, but insanely strong. And that's kind of the point. It's just, he's stuck there trying to become the best mage ever in, like, title
Yeah.
at the request of someone else, but he can't do any magic whatsoever, so he's basically just using brute force to mimic magical feats.
Yeah, okay. So
Like,
he's
it's funny
basically-
on paper, and it's got some good moments, but
It's basically the, like, wizard fantasy equivalent of if Naruto just focused around Rock Lee, who can't do anything else with chakra except for, like, that taijutsu brute fighting stuff. But he still has to try to, like, do everything everybody else does.
yeah, the only difference is he also has to hide the fact that he's doing it strictly through brute force.
Yeah.
Because apparently, for some reason, in their world, if you have no magic, you are left to die, so...
That sounds like a challenge.
Yeah, so it seems like a really dumb thing, but several of the character motivations are based off of that. So it's like, it seems like an incredibly stupid plot device, but unfortunately it's an important one, because otherwise several characters that are involved in this wouldn't even be here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, this is a part of, like, any media you hop into, though, is that there's a certain, like, suspension of disbelief or a certain buy-in you have to do to the premise and the concept. And that is also kind of what determines whether you're going to continue watching the show, whether you can buy into it or not. As it's going to be like a personal thing.
I have not started Sakamoto Days, though. I was gonna start that, but then it's like I saw the notice. It's like new episodes coming soon. It's like, well, fuck.
Yeah,
Now
it's supposed
because
to
of the
pick
way
back
I
up this
watch
summer, I
things,
think.
I'm going to have to wait.
Yeah. Yeah. Season 1 was pretty good though. So, when I guess season 2 finishes, you'll have something to look forward to. Personally, I can't wait. I'm probably gonna watch it week by week. It's still not the greatest thing ever or anything, but compared to most of the stuff I've been watching, man, I'm thirsty. You know, like it's a desert. I'm dry. I need something. It's better than fucking Dan to Dan, I'll tell you that. Which the movie is going to be in theaters.
Yeah, I haven't even watched that because I just literally everything I've heard about it is just like this does not sound interesting enough for me to even attempt watching.
Oh, I wouldn't recommend it. It's pretty mid. It's a little obscene. It's kind of all over the place. It's one of those things though where if you have nothing else to watch and it's not too obscene for you, it's an okay time passer. Which I'm not even like the same with the Mashal thing that you just mentioned, right? I'm not gonna hate a show for that because I remember watching so many things back in the day, especially like when we were back in school, where it's like I kind of just need a time passer, you know. I'm not gonna praise your thing, but it did its job.
Yeah, there are quite a few shows from back then. It's like, oh, you know this obscure show? It's like, no, it wasn't that obscure. I watched it. I forgot that it existed until you mentioned it, but I watched it.
Oh yeah, so many just like unremarkable series that there's really no point in remember. It's like somebody reminded me of like Zatch Bell recently, and it's like, sure, thank you for reminding me about that very forgettable show. The problem is though, almost every series is someone out there, it's their favorite series, so it does almost feel bad to like be making fun of somebody's favorite series, but at the same time, it's like, why did you choose that to be your favorite series of all things? You know?
It's kind of like that old joke, I'm not going to kink shame, I'm kink asking why.
Yes. It's exactly it. It's like, yeah, you know, it's your favorite. And to some degree, you can't even necessarily choose your favorite, but at the same time, why? Oh, hey, Mike is here.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, honestly, I'm making fun of it, but I ain't gonna throw too much shade, because, I mean, my favorite shows tend to be ones that nobody actually gave a shit about, so...
Yeah.
I'm not gonna yuck anyone's yum.
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
All right. So how would I get my camera on then?
There should be a little button at the bottom that looks like an old studio camera. And there should be a drop down too, that if for some reason had more than one camera, you could pick it. But if you click the button, it turns green, your camera should be on. Might take a second or two to load in, but yeah. How you doing?
All right, I got your message. I actually was out having dinner. That's why I didn't get in until like a few minutes ago.
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah. So,
I reached out to a few people kind of last minute because it wasn't even till last minute that I knew Marsupial wasn't coming on. I went to go check in on him, and he was just like curled up in his bed, barely awake after I knocked on the door, and it's like, huh? It was like, do I need to go find somebody else? I was like, yeah, that'd probably be for the best. And then he just kind of like rolled over and went back to sleep.
So is he sick or is he just exhausted?
Yes.
Yes to both?
Yeah. He looked like he was doing a little better yesterday. His voice was hoarse. But he got up and he did work stuff this morning. He probably just pushed himself too hard, and the cold itself got a second wind and hit him harder.
All right. I'll be. Let's see. I'm trying. Okay, so.
Anytime you need to
step
turn your camera on or off, that same toggle should do it for you.
Okay. I'm gonna step away for a
Yeah.
moment because I gotta rinse off my glasses here. But I'll be right back.
I'm trying to remember where we were. Oh yeah, we were mostly just asking like rhetorical question to a person that's not even here about why something would be their favorite show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually watched something really good recently. I don't want to talk about it too much. Like, maybe I'll give like a brief synopsis, because I watched it with Marsupial, so I want to talk about it maybe the next time that he's filling up to being on. But we watched on Crunchyroll Train to the End of the World, which was pretty good. It's very surreal, very absurd. Felt almost like a Douglas Adams story to a degree, but like this weird phenomenon 7G, which yes, it's like playing on. There's like 5G, 6G, and now there's a 7G that's supposed to be so much more powerful than everything else that it like connects everybody's consciousness together or some BS like that, right? And it just messed up the whole world. Basically, nothing is normal. Every town is different. People have been turned into all kind of things, almost no different to like toads being turned into bricks when Bowser comes through, right? And these 4 girls need to ride this train along the only train track left in the world to Ikebukuro to figure out what's going on. It was a pretty good series that I will definitely talk into more detail the next time Marsupial can be on. But I definitely recommend people watch it if they haven't.
And as always, before I came in, of course, I did like and share the stream.
Oh, well,
as
thank
I
you.
always do. Yeah. I'm pretty good about that. All right,
Yeah. But don't worry, you didn't miss anything. We didn't really get into much other than like, I was catching up with Buck on some of the stuff he'd been watching. We did briefly talk about Jonathan Joss's passing.
Jonathan Joss.
The actor for John Redcorn from King of the Hill, he was shot fatally.
Oh, okay. I've never actually watched King of the Hill, so.
Oh, it was just
Like,
it was news, and
Yeah. Well, actually, there have been a few. I mean, I know one of the things I covered last week was the passing of can't even remember his name. Oh, Peter David.
Yeah.
David.
I don't think we talked about that on here, but I was on a panel for the Matriarchy with Matt Reese, where that was like the whole panel was talking about Peter David. Yeah. Also, thanks, Fizz, for sharing your stream, and thanks anybody who did.
Yeah. Well, and not that this is quite as directly related to what we normally talk about, but Loretta Swit also passed away the other day. The lady who played Margaret Houlihan on MASH.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. I laughed at something because my brother said, but yeah, it's a tragedy losing all these people. But a lot of them, it's like they were in things so long ago, or what they did started so long ago that you're almost not surprised that they passed at this point. It's just still always sad all the same.
Well, Loretta was 87. She good.
Yeah.
She lived a good long life there. So.
Well, yeah, you consider like when did MASH happen, right?
72 to 83.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, a long life. Still always unfortunate, but hey, you know what? I say it's unfortunate. Depending on how things go, sometimes it's better to go in your 70s and 80s than it is to make it to 90 or 100. Like it's almost cool to hit like the high score on the year count, but God, the quality of life some people have at that age is just almost not worth it.
Yeah, what's the point if you're going to be stuck in bed the whole time? But, yeah. So I did catch some of what you guys were talking about, before I came in. Of course, I guess one of the animes that you guys were talking about that Buck, I guess, has watched was one where basically, if you don't know magic, then you're kind of nothing.
Sort of. That's kind of the premise.
Because I remember watching an anime like that a while back, but where basically there's been a few animes like that. Of course, one of them that does come to mind is Mabura. I don't think that would have been the one though.
No.
It was like kind of the thing was where in that particular case it was the guy had very limited magical ability in of himself, but his bloodline could produce, a generational wizard kind of thing. And you had these three girls. It is Maburaho I'm talking about, of course.
Yeah. No, we were talking about Nashel, right? What was the subtitle? Muscles and Magic, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Magic and Muscles, something
Magic
like
and
that.
Muscles. Okay.
Because in that one, it's basically just he has no magical ability whatsoever. Like, people even have, like, marks on their faces to, like, demonstrate what kind of magics they have affinity for and how much. And he's literally born without a mark on his face, which people who are markless are either arrested, abandoned, or flat out executed. But he is absurdly strong to the point that when, this Magister goes after him, he uses a spell that he once used to fight off a dragon, and he just slaps it to the side. And he's doing things that people think should be impossible out of pure brute strength. So he's like, you know what? You know what would get me a lot of prestige? If I knew the next guy in charge. I think you could do that. So he just gets stuck having to go to this magic academy despite having no magical abilities whatsoever. But he's also a complete and total idiot. To the point that someone tries to teach him how to make potions, and he somehow, no matter what, turns it into a cream puff.
This almost sounds like somebody's D&D campaign, where it's like, okay, I'm just going to take Conan the Barbarian and drop him into Hogwarts.
Well, I do know that Mashal they did actually have it briefly on Adult Swim for a while, on Saturday, not adult, Toonami. Saturday nights, and I did try to watch it, but I eventually stopped watching Toonami because it was getting to the point where now all it is just it reruns of stuff that I've already seen dozens of times over, and or stuff that's not even really anime. It's more like the Americanized anime they're coming out with.
Oh yeah, the stuff that's not really anime, but they call it anime, right? Like the whole My Adventures with Superman and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, they think that because they draw it like anime, then it's anime, but it's not, because there's a whole cultural aspect to that too.
Yeah. Well, it's like I got upset. Honestly, this one's a little bit more nuanced on the argument, but I'm still I would not call it anime unless I was speaking Japanese, in which all animation is anime when you're speaking Japanese. But it was like when I was going through the Crunchyroll Awards, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off was in there. I'm like, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is not anime. And people will argue, it's like, well, it was made by a Japanese studio. It's like, yes, it was made by a Japanese studio, but the primary target audience was Americans. And the thing that actually makes something anime is if the primary target audience is to air on Japanese TV, not for American audiences, right? Because otherwise you'd have to say that the Thundercats was anime because it was made almost entirely by a Japanese studio outside of the script was American.
If you think about it, A lot a lot of the Rankin Bass stuff from the '80s.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think all Thundercats, Silverhawks, the comic strip, which had like Crazy Cats, Tiger Sharks, all that.
It was like The Hobbit, right? The Hobbit, the team that worked on that, outside of like the American writers and producers and everything, but the actual animation team would later split into two different teams, and one of them went on to make the Thundercats. The other team went on to form Studio Ghibli. Fizz has a question. Why does nobody care about dubbing and localizing French cartoons? I wouldn't say they don't care, but they used to do that quite a bit. Like there were a lot on Cartoon Network back in the day. Code Lyoko, Totally Spies, stuff like that. Those were originally in French.
There's even Whack Fu that's currently on Netflix still.
Yeah. Sometimes they do just want to remake them, though. Like, you go back, the Smurfs was originally French, both the comic and the original cartoon, the old black and white one. But they just wanted to make an American one when they finally decided to bring the Smurfs over here at Hanna-Barbera Studios. But the French stuff occasionally gets made. It just depends if the French studios are making anything at the time that they want to localize.
Well, it's funny too, because I think some of the ones that, not just some of the ones you mentioned, but I think there are a few others that come to mind.
Yeah.
They were originally done in France, but the company, or at least the voice crew, the voice acting crew that would normally do a lot of them would be usually based out of the New York-based voice actors, like the 4Kids voice actors. Now I don't know I don't even think 4Kids is even a thing anymore, but
Yeah.
But it's that set. It's the guys like Dan Green, like Eric Stewart, like the late Rachel Lillis.
Yeah. Well, it is also mostly like Netflix that ends up doing that these days, right? Like if there is something from France that is being dubbed and localized, it's probably not going to be on Cartoon Network like it used to. It's probably just going to go straight to Netflix. One of the biggest, very popular series during the last decade was the Miraculous Ladybug, which was originally a French show.
Yeah, I think I did feature some articles on that one on my show a few times.
Oh, that reminds me, Asterix and Obelix. That's another thing that's been localized and dubbed quite a few times. In fact, their most recent animation was a Netflix original. So it was like dubbed and localized for Netflix.
Though that's one of those series that I still prefer going back to the old comics. But they keep the art pretty similar in almost every adaptation of Asterix.
Yeah, I just wish I could find Asterix and the Vikings because that one had Brad Garrett in it, which is hilarious to me.
Yeah.
I actually just as part of my anime watching block, I just recently started watching the ADV dub of Super Dimension of Fortress Macross.
Oh, okay.
The reason I say ADV dub is because it was previously dubbed by Harmony Gold, made as part of Robotech. Robotech was a merger of Super Dimensional Fortress Macross.
I have never watched a single dub of Macross, ever. I've only ever watched it in the original Japanese.
Well, see, I know that
series.
the Robotech series was done basically by the LA crew, and then ADV that's the Houston crew, which meant you had Dick and Monica and all them. So on that one, that was done in 2006. So
Yeah.
the dub was.
Fizz Joseph says, I thought Miraculous Ladybug was cringe when it first came out. Then again, I wasn't the target audience. I mean, that last part is what says it all. The target audience for Miraculous Ladybug was... I'm sure there were some guys of the age that liked it because there was the superheroics in it. But it was definitely 14-year-old girls is the target audience for the Miraculous Ladybug. But you know what, though? I'm gonna lay it down. Here's the reality for you. Everything is cringe. to someone, right? You have to embrace your cringe. The cringing mechanism is also the filtering mechanism as to whether you should be around or not.
Yeah, it's probably, I guess the cringing effect is, it's probably something that's probably trying to tell you that, okay, if I don't get out of here, I'm going to barf up
Yeah.
bottle liver or something.
Well, it's like the cringing effect is that last part of his statement, right? It's that trigger letting you know I am not the target audience for this.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, you know me, I like all, because you and I talked about this on occasion, Metal. You know that I like all kinds of anime. I like the action adventure stuff, the sci-fi stuff. I like the slice of life stuff too. I mean, I just finished watching the 1979, the Leaf Studios dub of the 1979 Anne of Green Gables, and that one was actually pretty good storyline wise.
Oh, no, that's actually up there as like one of the best adaptations of like a story ever. That original one is basically scene for scene for all the books. Like it doesn't deviate or anything. It's just like going through every single chapter of all of the Anne of blanks, because they weren't all Anne of Green Gables. It's like the first one, but all of the Anne Shirley books. And the new one's pretty good too. I've been watching it, but that one's more of like a condensed version. It doesn't go through every single thing.
Yeah. Well, this particular one that I just finished watching, of course, was those last, because it was a 50 episode anime, right?
Yeah.
And and so with that, well, I'm going to finish my thoughts and I'm going to go one more time just so I can turn on the light here. But like it's a 50 episode anime, and like those last 5-6 episodes that basically went from Anne, getting the award from Queen's College, to Matthew's passing, and then they're in that whole thing to watch was pretty. The dramatics, they really captured that, that whole experience quite well with that.
Yeah, the only thing I don't remember if the original series would did it, because I think it ended before it actually continued. I went to the end of Anne's story, is I don't remember if it covered her becoming Anne Blythe.
No. So the one that I just finished watching, 1979. Basically, they ended at the point where Anne had decided to stay in Green Gables instead of going off to Redmond College.
Okay.
She had taken the teaching position at Avonlea, and she finally made peace with Gilbert Blythe.
Yeah. So spoilers for anybody who's never read the books, and probably spoiler for the new series that since they're doing condensed, they are probably going to go that far. In the end, she and Gilbert eventually, they didn't just reconcile, they get married and have children. That's the actual ending of Anne's story. She becomes Anne Blythe.
It's kind of funny because I kind of suspected that with just how the characters are listed. I had a feeling that even though through at least much of the series that I saw, they had more of a very contentious relationship.
Yeah.
But the thing about passion, though, right? The thing about passion is it can express itself in many different forms. It's not always, in like utter romance or heat of the dog, as it were.
Yeah.
Passion, you can hate just as passionately as you can love.
Yeah. Well, and also in that story, it's almost kind of one-sided, the contention, because like Gilbert, he's after that initial teasing, he's like trying his best to make up with Anne for years until like, he helps her from almost drowning, and then she still doesn't want to be friends. He's like, fine, I'm not going to ask anymore. you know? But, like, he still supports her despite all that. And it's really just her stubbornness that stops it for as long as it was.
Buck, you've kind of gone silent there. Don't. Grant, I know I can be a bit of a motor mouth at times, but
unless he's
like
got
you have
something to
hide
say,
yourself.
he just likes to listen. That's Buck.
Yeah, I just tend to stay quiet unless I have something to say about the subject, and I don't follow Anne of Green Gables, so I have nothing to add to the conversation there.
I just didn't want you to feel like, because as Metal can tell you, I'm big on trying to get everybody involved in conversation as much as possible.
Don't worry about it. Listen, this is my show. If I need somebody to talk, I will ping them directly, okay? I'm the dungeon master around here.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know me. I host my own show too, and it's that part of me that just trying to get everybody involved, just.
Joshua's here. Hey, Joshua. And he says, maybe it's cringe because it's bad. That is a fair attitude to have. But I honestly think that for the most part, it's because it doesn't appeal to the individual. That's why they cringe. Because, like, some of the most popular things in the world, I'm not going to say they're good, right? There's that ad popularum fallacy. But you look at, like, women's romance novels. Mm-hmm. If a guy reads it, you're like, this is awful. But it's really popular among women. Like, women end up loving it. And it's like, well, obviously the guy is not the target audience. They're selling it to women. It's you got to think it's just too kino for you. That's what you got to have that mindset. It's just too kino.
Oh yeah. Now, Metal, I know you've been on the historical comic retrospect with me. The show I do on Sundays where we go back, look back in time. Even though we haven't gotten to them yet.
Yeah.
There was a period of time when comic book companies actually did roll out their own set of, like, romance, comics.
Romance comics used to be the most popular
50s.
At one point.
Huh?
So romance comics used to be the most popular and highest selling comics at one point.
Yeah. I know we haven't got to it yet in terms of the historical comic retrospect on Sundays. But
yeah. Especially Archie.
We'll eventually get to it.
There was like a couple decades of Archie where they kind of almost even sidelined the comedy aspects to focus more on the love triangle.
Yeah. Oh, the Archie, Betty, Veronica love triangle?
Yeah. Especially when they start focusing on the book, Betty and Veronica, right? Like, there's a whole time where, like, even Archie's progress as a character just takes a complete sideline because they're focusing on the triangle that the girls form between him.
Yeah. Well, it's funny.
Did it sell? It sold.
Archie came
lot.
out in, I think, in 41 or 42, and he's still running to this day, like 80 years later.
Oh yeah, I love Archie. Archie's great.
Well, I mean, I think one of the nice things about Archie is that, especially when you did have the height of superheroes and all that, Archie was a nice comedic slice of life break from everything else that was being put out there. I just, but I don't know if they're still keeping it light or if they're like trying to push woke garbage into it now.
Oh, they were trying to push that at least for like a decade. I think like maybe a little bit more. Since like 2008, they were slowly pushing that in there. I haven't been following to tell you if they still are. But it also kind of makes sense if anybody was going to, that Archie actually would, because that's the stuff that's going on in schools. And Archie was always trying to push directly to like late middle school through high school students, right? So, I get it. I wish they didn't. I think it makes their stories worse and their characters worse. But of all companies, it's the one I get why they tried to do that. Superhero comics aren't going to sell more if you do that, but teen dramas might, because that's the stuff they're going through in high school right now.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, and even when I was a kid growing up in the '80s and stuff, of course, there were times I'd catch reruns or in syndication of stuff
Yeah.
like not just the Archie show or the new Archies or all that, but also like the Groovy Ghoulies and Friends, for example, which was
Yeah,
also
yeah.
filmed, you know, um, so, yeah.
Oy.
So you ready for Sunday Metal?
Am I ready for Sunday? Am I ever?
Uh, yeah, this Sunday we'll be going over comics that went on sale in May of 1940 from Quality Comics. So we'll be like catching up with Doll Man, Uncle Sam,
Yeah.
The Clock, Black Condor, Red Bee.
Oddly enough, I was actually talking to somebody about some of those quality characters recently. It was after the last matriarchy. We were talking about All-Star Squadron, right? Which incorporated a lot of the quality stuff into the DC universe because they had purchased them at one point. And I had never read All-Star Squadron or knew it was a thing. So I'm like, oh man, this is actually interesting. I should read it sometime.
Yeah,
Especially because I knew some of the characters.
All-Star Squadron, as I recall, was kind of the thing where it was you had the Justice League in there, and then you had basically just about every DC hero available.
Yeah. But they also had incorporated a lot of the quality characters that they had purchased into that as well, into quite a few of the different.
Oh yeah, they did that with some of the Fawcett characters too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Charlton.
Yeah, and they were basically. It was more of a way of like canonizing the Golden Age, right? To where even some of those older characters that they brought in were supposed to almost be like Golden Age stand-ins for characters that never had a stand-in in the DC universe. See, Fishosa says I was laughing down when he found out about the Riverdale show. Yeah, that Riverdale show was awful. Even compared to at least when they tried to do that stuff in the Archie comics, it's still that lighthearted Archie style of things. It's still kind of trying to be comedy. Riverdale was just edgy Dawson's Creek with Archie characters that were not even really the Archie characters. They're like the skin suits of Archie characters.
If I understand, so Riverdale was a live-action version of Archie.
Yes.
And that had the late Luke Perry in it, right?
I don't even remember. Probably.
Yeah. I think Luke Perry was in it, but then he died during, I guess, sometime during the show. So.
Yeah.
His son's a professional. His son Jack is actually a professional wrestler with AEW. So.
And Fizz even says it wasn't even wokeness. It was just that Riverdale was bad. And that's true. I mean, there was a little bit in there, but you could take it out and that wouldn't make Riverdale any better. It was just like a really bad... It was a CW show where obviously they could have made it anything else. They just chose to let it wear an Archie skin suit. Which is awful because... There were some cool characters that had equivalents in there that like people didn't even know of because they haven't seen the light of day in years. And it's like, great, this is how people are going to know them now. Like I think Katie Keene was in Riverdale. It's like, this is how people are going to know Katie Keene now. That's sad. We can Alexandria and Alexander from Josie and the Pussycats because they were also... people who attended Riverdale High School. That's how they're going to know them. They're not going to know them how they appeared in Josie and the Pussycats because this is what you're introducing younger people to. God, I hate the people who.
Well, I mean, I've watched Josie and the Pussycats before. In fact, nowadays, if you happen to have friendly TV and can get MeTV Tunes, Josie and the Pussycats is on Saturday mornings on that channel, I think 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific. So
Yeah.
Just a heads up for everybody if you just in case you want to try to get it. But yeah. But it's kind of funny because one of the things that MeTV10's been talking about was like the permanent home of Saturday mornings, and also because a lot of the cartoons they show are like Saturday morning favorites, but also of Saturday morning cartoon voices. So they like talk about how you have like Casey Kasem, who of course did Shaggy and Scooby Doo, who was Alexander and Josie and the Pussycats, and Robin.
It was in every single show in one way or another, usually playing somebody who is the same character as Shaggy.
Well, not necessarily, because Casey Kasem did lend his voice to Transformers Generation 1 cartoon.
Yeah.
He was Cliff Jumper, Teletran 1, Dr. Arkaville, and Blue Streak in that one.
But it is kind of funny that like every like main Hanna-Barbera show that he voiced, he was basically voicing that show stand-in for Shaggy. Which, in the case of Josie the Pussycats, Alexander existed as a character before that. He was always the sleazy manager for the Pussycats that you should not trust. But they kind of worked him in that version of the show to be a bit more like Shaggy. Because that's just like every character they had Casey play on the net,
Well, I think also one of the things about that too, you have to remember too, when they did make the cartoon for Josie and the Pussycats, that was a cartoon made for kids.
Yeah.
So I don't think a lot of parents would be too keen on the idea of their kids watching a sleazy manager type character.
They still kind of got it in there though. A little bit, right? Because he was still always focused on money, right? Making it and also cutting corners so he didn't have to spend as much. That part they slipped in there quite a bit. And they just kind of made him kind of whipped by his sister in that one, which I'm not going to say that's not how he is in the comics. It's just more in the comics as the older brother. He is the one doing things, and then he just, like, listens to his sister. Like, she doesn't even have to ask more than once. Like, of course he's going to spoil his baby sister.
Alexandria, who in the filmation, in that cartoon, was voiced by Sherry Alberoni, who also did the voice of Wendy Harris in the first Super Friends season back in 1973. So,
I love that the Super Friends literally just had 2 unpaid interns working for them.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny because they had Marvin and Wendy in the first season, who were voiced by Frank Welker and
Super Marvin.
And then when in 1976, and they brought in the all new Super Friends out, they switched Marvin and Wendy and Wonder Dog out for Zan, Jaina, and Gleek.
Yeah.
Who were voiced respectively by Michael Bell, Liberty Williams, and Gleek. I think Gleek was also done by Michael Bell. Actually, usually Frank Welker would do
any
animal voices in most of the cartoons.
Yeah.
With the exception like Scooby Doo, which was done for a long time by Don Messick. But
see, Fizz says I wanted to come on to discuss an observation he made about Family Guy. Well, I don't want to talk about Family Guy, so we're in an impasse there. But yeah, no, I was just always found it funny that these 2 kids that were on the show were basically unpaid interns, and then later, I think somebody else thought it was funny that they were basically unpaid interns too, because there's a comic that follows up in the continuity of the Super Friends that follows them in college, and they actually got college credits for helping out the Super Friends as well. So it was like a real internship that they got these colleges, and they were, I think, going to be vigilantes. I don't know why you need to go to college to become a vigilante, but that's just the DC universe. Why not, right?
Oh, it's kind of funny. They kind of played it up a little bit in the Teen Titans cartoons from the 2000s. You know, when you had the Villain Academy.
Yeah, the Hive.
The Hive.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is, I think, something that actually already existed in the DC universe. I don't think it was made up for that show. They did make it more of a school than it was before, almost like a boarding school that you went to.
And then in the Young Justice, cartoon of the 2009, 2010, and continued in the 20, in the late 2000, late 10s, early 20s. You did have Marvin and Wendy make a return. They were like college classmates of like Superboy, and so he did do all that too. I like the first, like for Young Justice, I liked the first 2 seasons, but then when they brought it back years later, and they kind of made it all woke, it's like, ugh.
Yeah, to be fair though, I know a lot of people liked Young Justice. I've talked to Buck about it several times. You enjoyed like the first 2 seasons of it, right?
Yeah, the first 2 seasons were pretty good. Season 2 did have a lot of stuff that felt like it was just jammed in there just for the sake of being in there. But the first 2 seasons, more specifically the first season, was good. I enjoyed that.
See, I just could never get into it. I tried several times. It was like, man, I don't know what it is about this particularly. It is just not hooking me. I think part of it too is like, I was talking to Matt Reese about this recently. It doesn't feel like the actual title, Young Justice. It feels like they're just trying to do another Teen Titans. And then if you compare it to the Teen Titan that we just had before that, it's not as good as Teen Titans. And I think that might have been part of what was pulling me out of it. Is like, it's just, it's like a mediocre replacement for something that we just had.
Oh, yeah.
Well, no, I definitely agree with that, with how they treated a lot of the characters.
I think with Young Justice too, the first, as I said, the first 2 seasons were better than the later seasons. I think partly due to the fact that, I think part of the reason why it fell off was partly because of the fact you had that long gap in between season 2 and 3. Because it's like they went through all that whole rigmarole. Okay, we have to find somebody who would be willing to show this stuff. And then when they went woke, I think they would have ended up turning off as whenever you go woke, turning off like your audience, at least half your audience, because a lot of half your audience that might be into it, maybe more traditional comic book superhero fanfare, and then you're trying to shove this progressive woke stuff down the throats, and people are just gonna go, no, I don't think so. And then of course in the later seasons they did a lot of like they did the race swapping, they did the gender swapping. I mean, they gender swapped the Newsboy Legion.
Yeah.
The Newsgirl Legion. So, I mean, and I had actually read some of those stories before in the comics, and they were pretty good. So,
yeah. You see, at some point they should just like own up to the fact that they just want to swap everything. And they should just do an animated series that takes place in Earth 11, where every single person is gender swapped anyway. It's like, just go all the way with it. Like, this is an official canon Earth. Just say that it takes place in Earth 11, Stop beating around the bush.
And that's kind of the difference between what they did in the comics back in that time and what they're trying to do now.
Yeah.
Okay? And it'll get to a point that I'm about to make once. So, at least back then, when they did make Earth 11, right? They had an idea where they wanted to do this concept where they wanted to gender and race swap everything. And they made a separate Earth to do it with. They didn't. Rather, as opposed to today, nowadays, they take established characters and try to do it, and that's what turns a lot of people off to it.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, in the Superman canon, um, they also had an Earth where instead of landing in Smallville, Kansas, he landed in Russia, right?
Oh yeah, Red Sun.
Red Sun. So, I mean, if you want to do stuff like that, just do a whole separate thing with it. Don't just try to make it part of the main canon.
Well, I think it's the issue though is that
like 50 to 75% of the fan base doing that.
the way DC has been handling it for almost the entire time they've been doing anything is that animated series or even like movies and stuff technically aren't the main canon ever. Even if they're adapting something, they're always labeled like their own universe and stuff, so they think they could just do whatever they want anytime they want. That's kind of like the precedent that they set up. If it shows
I
says,
think it depends on who you're talking, because Super Friends was more or less established as its own canon, more or less. In fact, it's kind of one of those rare occasions where a cartoon actually was adapted into a comic instead of the other way around.
yes,
Most of the time it's the comics that get adapted into animated form and to cartoon form. But Super Friends was one of those where it was the cartoon first, and then it made a Earth all of its own. Like I liked the DCAU stuff. That was pretty good. They did adapt a lot of like the post-crisis stuff pretty faithfully there. I mean, yeah, you probably did have some slight adaptations there or slight changes, but they weren't like over the top. I mean, you even got in the DCA, you even got the Dakota verse put in there with Static Shock.
yeah.
And of course, they created another Earth variant with the Batman Beyond universe. So.
Yeah, which I'll get back to that in a minute, but Fischoso asks, notice how rare female characters get swapped to male. I can tell you exactly why that's the case. It's because there are just way more male characters than female in these things in general, and they're looking for more female roles. That's just straight up, that's the reason why they do it, right? It's like, honestly, I could use Power Rangers as the example when they take Mighty Morphin's, ZU Dino Ranger, right? Like the original that of Super Sentai that came over here. And there's only one girl in the team. And you can even notice that when you look at them, and only one of them has a skirt. But they decided that they were going to swap the Yellow Ranger into being a girl too. There's a kid, you don't notice, they're all in uniforms. Pink is a girly color, so you don't even really like question like, oh, why is the of the two girls, the pink one's the only one that got skirt. You just think like, oh, maybe she's just even girlier, right? But they needed another female role. That's how all of these productions look. They're like, there's too many guys, we need more girls in here, so they swap something, right? It's the same reason why you almost never see some other race being swapped to a white character, is because they're like, most of the characters are white. We want to diversify it. We're swapping out. This is not me justifying it. This is just me explaining why it happens.
Yeah, that's also the thing about the Super Friends cartoon too, is that particularly when you did get to 1976's the all new Super Friends hour, and then going through into the early 80s there, they actually created
their own superheroes.
They created five heroes for the purposes of diversification.
Apache Chief Ine Chalk.
Yeah. Black Vulcan, Samurai, Apache Chief, El Dorado, and Rima. Okay, so you had the African American, Japanese, you had the Native American, you had the Hispanic Mexican, and then you had basically the South American Jungle Girl. And of course, I know that there are people probably today that would go back, look at these characters, would start crying, crying about, oh, this is so stereotyped.
I think they're just more worried about the fact that Apache Chief is only wearing a loincloth and becomes super big. So just don't look up because you're going to be seeing some stuff you don't want to see.
Funnily enough, he has been adapted several times, although they changed his name to Long Shadow.
Yeah, I'll admit, Long Shadow is a much cooler name for a hero, but I like Apache Chief. It's a fun name.
Well, I know that they had the whole parody bit on Harvey Birdman. I don't know if you guys ever watched that episode where, he basically was drinking coffee, spilled coffee on his lap, and he apparently lost his power to go big. And there was a lot of insinuation there about what part couldn't go big, if you get what I mean.
Yeah. Fitzjoseph says you do see Asians swap to white all the time. Ancient One, Mandarin, and even the CEO and Bloodshot were all made white in the film. Yeah, okay, so this is a very specific exception to that other rule. And the exception is you see people that would piss China off being swapped to white, specifically, right? Like the Ancient One being a good example is supposed to be Tibetan, right? Like a Tibetan master. China doesn't even recognize Tibet as a place. It's just a part of China. They wouldn't like it. They wouldn't watch your movie if like the person teaching everything was a Tibetan master. So they had to put in a freaking Celtic chick, right? Instead, that's the reason why you see those swaps. It's like you just can't make China upset or they won't watch your movie.
And considering that they're the most populous country in the world, that's taken quite a big hit.
Well, most populous country in the world of people who might see your movie, right? Technically, India is more populated, and their movie industry thrives, but they're probably not going to go and watch your movie over whatever cool thing they're making in Bollywood right now anyway. Yeah. But also, Asians are fine to swap in their eyes because they're basically white anyway. Like that is how those people see it. They think Asians are basically just white, unless they're dark, right? There's two types of Asians. There's the white passing Asians, and then there's the dark Asians.
Actually, you know what's kind of funny about what you just said right there, Metal.
Yeah.
So I told you there's this one wrestling organization that I recently started following over in Japan. It's what they call Joshi, which is a women's pro wrestling organization, right? Stardom. And I have noticed that, and I've noticed a lot of the wrestlers there are could pass for being Caucasian.
Especially Japan. Most Japanese people are pale.
If you look at their eyes, Well, I generally thought Japanese were more slightly darker, not as dark as, let's say, Hispanics or as Mexicans.
It depends on where in Japan. But most of Japanese, especially the big city folk, are very pale. Because you have to think the climate of most of Japan is basically the same as Maine, especially northern Japan, right? If you go across it, it's basically like living on the east coast of America. That is like the climate of Japan. There are some people get a little bit darker as you get more south, especially if you go off of the mainland onto the surrounding islands. You get some people who are naturally a bit darker. Some people even move into the mainland, so you'll see some variance. But most Japanese people are very pale. And you could say the same about Koreans are also very pale. A lot of China, Chinese people are very pale. Taiwanese Chinese are very pale too. It's not until you start getting more southern, right, where you start getting into the Indian subcontinent, where you start getting into a lot of the island areas. These people are still Chinese. Maybe? Well, yeah, Okinawa people are pretty dark, but even back over to the rest of Southeast Asia.
I
Singapore
think
has darker
it's
Chinese
one of the
people.
I think one of the first Japanese people,
Yeah.
or people of Japanese descent that kind of crossed my mind first time is like somebody like Pat Morita, the late Pat Morita.
Yeah.
Mr. Miyagi from Karate Kid. So.
But yeah, like in mainland Japan, most people are very, very pale.
God, I was just kind of laughing to myself over here because you're talking about that, and I'm just remembering how, like, the woke crowd just proved how racist they are, complaining that Mirko, because she has a dark skin, should be voiced by a black actress,
Oh, they do
only
that
to
all
have
the
it
time.
pointed out that she had a black voice actress.
Yeah.
So it's like, so in other words, you guys didn't look this up, or you think she doesn't sound black enough.
Yeah, but yeah, it's like most characters in if it's in anime, unless it's specifically somewhere else, right? Like if it's set in Europe or something like that, most characters are just Japanese. Like you could just bet they're supposed to be Japanese, whether they're paler, whether they're darker, whether they have like bright hair. They'll give like a Japanese person flaming red hair just because it's more interesting. And if you were to actually translate that into live action, they've got like dusty brunette hair instead of pure black, right? That's just how it is. And darker
like
people
bright
tend
red
to just
hair,
be tan.
like Misty or Jessie from Pokemon.
Maybe closer to Jessie, because I believe Jessie is supposed to definitely be Japanese. Pokemon's a little bit of an interesting one because the world they live in is kind of like a world where they're way, way past anybody basically living where their people came from, right? Like Lieutenant Surge is there, and Lieutenant Surge is outright stated to have basically been an American, right? So like Misty could be Scottish of ancestry, and her family's just been in Japan forever. We don't know. Like Pokemon is an anomaly of migration that you don't want to dive into. It's an alternate world, right? But like most Japanese shows take place in Japan, and the main characters are Japanese, or they might be like a Japanese god or something. And you might have like I know Yoroichi from Bleach is like a big example of that, where people think she's supposed to be black or whatever. It's like, no, there are characters that are definitely supposed to be black in Bleach, and Tite Kubo lets you know. You can tell right away from looking at them. But she's supposed to be like Pacific Islander or something like that. Like that's more of what her design looks like. She's just Japanese. Mm-hmm. She's just really, really dark. Kind of supposed to be Japanese, maybe Okinawan or something, but she's a god. She's literally their thunder god and transforms into a cat. You know, like people take this stuff way too seriously just because they're looking for representation where it's not. You know? And it's like, why do you even care? It's a Japanese show, for crying out loud.
Oh, I also just remembered something else. When Marvel went from one extreme of being in hot water with these people to the other by replacing Iron Fist with an Asian.
Oh, yeah. Which defeats the purpose, because Iron Fist is supposed to be like a fish out of water story.
I mean, to be honest, I checked out what happened with the new one, and it beat the purpose altogether anyway, because he was literally gifted the power. He didn't earn it.
Yeah. That's stupid. Fischoso had a question. He said, why did Earthsea anime make everyone look Japanese, even though they were mostly African in the book? I don't know. I can't answer that. I don't even know what Earthsea is. So that's out of my knowledge. There could be good or stupid reasons for that. It could go either way. But yeah, the Iron Fist thing, I thought that was so dumb when they changed it. It's like it completely ruins the fish out of water story. It takes the merit out of it. It's just awful. Though I think that maybe people don't get a fish out of water story. Like, you know, like these the people who are complaining about it. Maybe they just don't understand that concept.
Well, they don't know the character, so they just immediately assume it's a white savior story, even though it's like, no, the point is he was so much of an outsider that he was not taken seriously, And the reason he got so good to the point that he earned the power was because he had to do 20 times better than anyone else to be seen as an equal.
Yeah. Which I've always liked Danny. I think Danny's a great character who has not had enough justice done for him, like, at all. I kind of somewhat enjoyed the show, but man, that show did everything they needed to shit on him.
Oh yeah, no kidding. Like, how the hell do you have Danny and Luke on the same like, let alone show, the same, like, universe, and have practically no interactions between them other than Luke shitting on him for being a rich white kid?
Yeah, they had, like, what, one fight that, their first fight, or the only one they got in the Defenders, kind of made sense, because Danny was still new, right, to doing everything that he was doing. So if he's not in control, like, Luke can ragdoll him around. But obviously, if he actually uses the Iron Fist for what it is, there's not really anything Luke Cage can do about that.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest issue is, like, a new to this Danny does not know how hard to hit somebody like Luke and not accidentally kill him.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's like the Spider-Man problem.
I mean,
the Spider-Man would kill basically all of his villains if he wasn't holding back.
With, like, the sole exception of Rhino.
Yeah.
Rhino is the only one who's actually tough enough to take those punches.
Yep.
Which is why Pete is so lucky that the Rhino tends to be so stupid.
Well, that's been a common motif in a lot of entertainment. You know, guys who tend to be super, with few exceptions, of course, but usually big, strong guys tend to, their biggest muscles are in their arms and chests, and their smallest muscles tend to be in their heads.
Well, I mean, a lot of times you kind of have to do that, because if they're as smart as they are strong, you really have to reach to try and find an excuse for things they can't do.
Yeah, it's like you have to do.
It's kind of why it's kind of why Superman has had a lot of bad stories done, because there aren't that many writers who can really write around the fact that he has all these immensely high physical abilities versus the fact that he is also effectively a genius.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing about Superman's publication history too that you might not have been quite as aware of. So when Jerry and Joe were originally doing Superman, right? He wasn't quite as omnipotent as it would be presented in the Silver Age.
Oh no, that was something that took time. Like, it just ended up getting there. And a lot of it was due to practical reasons. Like, he couldn't even fly at first, but then they were like, it'd be way easier to animate this guy if he could fly,
Yeah, actually, the funny thing is that how he went from leaping to flying actually was due in big part to Fleischer's cartoon.
Yeah, that's what I said. It would be way easier to animate him if he was flying.
Yeah.
And that form he has like this, where of his flying form is, So
yeah, and a lot of it too is talking about easier to animate if he's flying is because they did a lot of rotoscoping, right? And it's really hard to rotoscope somebody in the jumping position, like you could do it mildly, but the type of jumps that Superman would do, like going over buildings, you wouldn't even begin to believe, how am I going to capture something like that to rotoscope in the first place? While flying, like, you could literally just put somebody on like a platform, and you could even like blow a fan through their cape or whatever, and you could rotoscope that easily. You could trace right over and everything. And the Fleischer cartoon was heavily rotoscoped.
Well, from one of the things I was just reading earlier today, in fact, I think Fleischer, because one of the stories I did was how June Foray actually was the one who helped to found the Annie Awards, basically animation awards.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, um, and because she was talking about how she wanted to do it to, to honor, Max the Fleischer brothers, from Fleischer Studios. And they did talk about how they did a lot of rotoscoping, a lot of what they call the tabletop process,
Yeah.
add more depth of video. Because one of the cartoons I was watching today during my cartoon watching was a little bit longer short feature, Popeye and Ali and Ali and the 40 Thieves.
Yeah.
Alibaba,
Well, their studio basically invented rotoscoping too. Like it was kind of like their thing, and then everybody else started doing it.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Fleischer, was being distributed at the time in the 30s there by Paramount. So
yeah,
and in late 1937, at that point, Paramount and Fleischer and Disney, in terms of numbers of short series they were producing, were doing the most at 4 each.
Yeah.
Fleischer was doing screen songs, color classics, Betty Boop and Popeye, and then Disney was doing silly symphonies, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and Pluto. And then with three, let's see, and Charles Mintz for Columbia was doing 3 features of Color Rhapsody, Crazy Cat, and Scrappy.
Yeah. Well, I love rotoscoping so much as a invention in the history of animation, especially when I talk to like younger artists and stuff or people who complain, because I know so many people who complain about the concept of tracing, and I'm like, no. The problem isn't tracing. The problem is that you're bad at tracing, right? Because a lot of the best comics in history, even like a lot of the best animation sequences, have all been either traced or rotoscoped. Like professional people do it all the time, something that could cut corners. But what professionals tend to do is they just tend to trace the form and then build on top of it, right? They don't do like a one-to-one recreation of the thing underneath. There's like, I just need a pose real quick, or I just need something that's got the proportions. Rotoscoping is kind of the same way. They'll use it so they can track the movements. They'll make like a wire, like a stick figure of the people underneath, and then they'll draw their characters over it. It's like tracing isn't the issue. It's just that you're bad at tracing. Yeah. Like the dance sequence in Beauty and the Beast, which there's the dance sequence in Robin Hood, and there's dancing in Snow White. All of these were rotoscoped from people doing real dances, and they just kind of like put the form underneath, and then they drew their characters over the tracked form. But you didn't have computers back then to track the form. You had to put it onto like a light table, and you had to Cinderella also had that too. You had to do the tracking yourself by putting like stick figures or wireframes that you hand drew over the people, and then you could go back and draw your characters on top of it.
Well, yeah, Cinderella was adapted several times in animated form. Yeah. Of course, there was Poor Cinderella in 1933 that starred Betty Boop. Well,
we're talking about Disney Cinderella.
In 1937, Chevrolet actually got into the animation business. So they actually produced a couple like 10-minute shorts starring Cinderella, basically trying to sell their cars, like a ride for Cinderella and a coach for Cinderella.
Yeah,
they're actually pretty good. They're pretty good in terms of the artwork. The whole point of each of these features, of these shorts, were basically trying to promote, their latest car, I believe. But something I would you, and I know you can find it on YouTube if a ride for Cinderella and a coach for Cinderella.
Yeah. Fizz also says Greg Land actually traces the faces. Yeah, and some people get away with it, some people don't. If I were to give anybody advice as an artist, don't ever directly trace a thing, right? It's okay to need a reference. You want to get things done quick, because one of the things about getting better at art is getting better at doing it quickly. But they're talking about tracing's not the problem. You're just bad at tracing. You still have to be able to do your fundamentals regardless, right? Like, you're taking a shortcut, but you would still need to be able to draw a person without tracing if you want it to look good. You're just trying to get a pose down, general structure. But if that structure wasn't there, you'd still need to be able to draw noses, draw eyes, draw mouths, draw the proportion of the face, draw hands, draw feet, draw the body itself. You need your anatomy, or else it doesn't even matter if you trace. That's why most people trace poorly. They have absolutely no skill in art at all.
Well, I'm one of those. I can draw. I remember when I was a kid, I try to draw stuff and I just get flustered. I just all over the place. It's like I couldn't stay in the lines. I was I hated art because of that.
Oh, I hate art because I'm good at it. So hating art is just a general human experience. I want you to know it doesn't go away no matter how good you get at it. If anything, you might even hate it worse the better you get at it, because you start developing the eye and knowledge to tell how poorly you executed something, right? Where other people may not. They're like, "Oh man, you're so good at this." It's like, no, that eye sucks. Trust me. If I redid that eye, it could be so much better. Give me another hour. That's just art. The general human experience is hating art. And anybody who tells you otherwise is lying to make themselves feel better. But anyway, we're at the end of the show. Thank you both for coming on. I had sent you guys the invite separately because of how late it was, and I sent it to Buck first. He didn't answer for a while, so then I sent it to Mike, and then Buck answered afterwards. But I'm glad to have both of you on. I think we had a good conversation. And also, thank you all for watching at home. Whether it is live now or later in the VOD, really appreciated. Do your due diligence and share it out if you haven't. Get more people in here. And hey, you can always give a donation to streamlabs.com/vomitoriumlive if you're feeling spicy. But with that, I'll let you guys say something real quick if you want to close out.
Something.
That's fair. Mike, you have something to say.
All right. Well, as some of you know, I have my own show. I do 6 nights a week, Monday through Friday. I do a niche newscast. My show's called the Mike 10. Monday through Fridays at 5 p.m. So Monday through Friday, we do a niche newscast where I go over news articles, in the areas of anime, cartoons, comics, manga, pro wrestling. Basically what traditionally considered heat. Some people don't like a particular term, but to group it all together, it's easier to just say it like that. So, and then on Sundays, in fact, Meadow will be joining me this Sunday. On Sundays with a co-host, I usually will do what I call the historical comic retrospective, a 2-hour block where we go through, we read, old comics. We're working our way through time here. We're focusing in on comics that went on sale in May of 1940. We read them, we comment on them, we do the voices. One part dramatic reading, one part
commentary.
And as always, if you guys come by and check out the show, as I always say, if anything grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability.
Yeah. This was, I said, very last minute, so I will be sure to move the link to your channel in the description when I go back later to cut off the loading and ending screen. It's just not there now. But if you guys are watching the VOD later, by the time you see this, it should probably be there.
So with that, so again, feel free to drop by, say hi, subscribe, like, share, and get involved in the conversation. That's why I call it the mic stand, because the whole point is to get everybody talking about the topics at hand.
Yep.
And
Right.
I don't know if you see it or not, but we got a visitor.
Oh, no, I see. But I'm cutting the show right now, so, again, thank you guys for coming on. We'll see you guys no later than Thursday for Game Central Junction. If I don't do anything in between, audience, you can feel free to yell at me, and maybe I'll come on and stream something. It's not that I don't want to. I just often forget to because I get wrapped up in everything else that I'm doing. So catch you guys later.
And thank you for having me on tonight.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you for letting me be part of the conversation with you there.